Okay.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody. I apologize for being late. I just couldn't figure out where the link was, the invite, so maybe I deleted it or something if it was from Zoom, I don't know. So let's go ahead and do roll call. Michael?
I'm here.
Lori?
Yep.
Thanks. Are you working today?
Nope.
Or you're home? Good. Thank you for being here. Great. Susan?
Yeah.
Don?
Present.
Sam?
Hello.
Hi. And Makoto is absent for now, and so we'll just check back if he joins us. That's great. So apparently there's no public comment.
No.
Okay. And the meeting minutes, when Sarah and I talked, she's not feeling very good. God, I love that background up, Sarah.
It's making me feel better.
Making me feel better. Is that something you can do like on Zoom or something? Set your
Yeah,
back?
it's a Zoom. Yeah.
Okay, well, we all agreed that since Sarah wasn't feeling very good, the meeting minutes weren't mission critical, so we bumped those to the May meeting, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's been a long week.
Is there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and press on.
We could skip to like updates until Kelly can join us if we wanted to.
Okay.
Moda Assist, I think everybody knows that St. Helens won. I know. But I was super encouraged by the level of engagement of the community. It was really positive. We had a lot of people voting and sharing, and you know, my family was checking in every day. I'm sure other people were too, and it was fun. I have a friend who at one point was on city council for St. Helens, and he might still be, I'm not sure, but I'm going to call him. One, to congratulate them. I'll call the mayor probably and congratulate him too, or maybe Stan wants to do that. But I want to find out what they did different. Their population is a little bit bigger than ours, but you know, we got really close that one day within 13 votes, and then like literally within like 48 hours, it was it just was like 2,000 votes. We were behind again. So I want to find out what they did. I'm wondering if the schools were much more organized. The kids were voting every day, maybe. I learned a ton about just posting videos with captions. That was one thing I learned how to do on Facebook. So it was, you know, it was worthwhile. And what I thought was great about it too was it was an opportunity to talk more about the master plan update and get maybe some people engaged in that process that might not have otherwise been engaged, because they kind of connected through this campaign. And so that's, you know, people are hoping now going forward we'll have some more universal design in our parks, and maybe it'll become part of our best practices anytime we develop a new park or update a park or replace equipment. I would think we would want to go that direction. So I thought it was well worth our time and something fun for the community to be focused on during this crazy time. And thanks to the board for being so engaged and sharing. And I know, Susan, you had friends in all kinds of places voting. So Susan and Sam, it looks to me just, I have the kind of the big key here. It looks like your mics are off, just FYI. Okay. Okay. So when you want to speak, turn it on, turn your mic on. Okay, great. Community garden. Do you guys have anything you want to add about the Moda Assist? Or
I'll just say Makoto's just now sitting down to the computer and signing on.
Okay, great.
He just texted me. So
okay, great. All right. Community garden. We've been working with the ant farm to, you know, repair the beds that really need it, and we have a pretty good plan, but it's turning out to be a little bit more expensive than I thought. So I need to talk to Mike about the parks maintenance budget and see if we can get a little help from that. And we have some money from obviously garden fees, but it's not enough to cover it. but we would be able to make a contribution this year and maybe make a journal entry next year from garden fees that could go back to the parks maintenance budget.
How much do we charge for a bed?
Right now it's $18 a bed, up from 15. And we are less expensive than a lot of places, but I sure hate to see that go up too much more. You know, they're going to put, these posts would be cedar posts. They should last a lot longer. I know, how long has the garden been in, Susan? 6 years, maybe?
At least, I think, yeah.
So, you know, really just last summer was when we really started to be concerned about the conditions of the beds themselves. And our garden is really nice compared to a lot. Some of them just have mounds of dirt and no bed, you know, no raised sort of structure at all.
And is the problem just the post, or is it also the sideboards and stuff?
It's both, but it's mostly the post. A lot of the boards can be reattached. So, you know, there'll be some triage a little bit, but, you know, it's primarily the post and having something solid to attach those boards that are falling off to. Do you agree, Susan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in some cases that the boards might be in bad shape too, but definitely the 4x4s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of think that, you know, if we're in there replacing the posts and the boards are bad, you know, sometimes there's a tendency to kind of just fix the thing that's really rotted out, but the other stuff that's, you know, kind of and getting near to the end of its life, there's the tendency to just, you know, you put in all the labor to kind of do one thing, you might as well just, you know, retire the whole thing, or, you know, fix that is anywhere near close to end of life. So, hey, Makoto.
Hi.
Hi, Makoto.
Welcome.
Is that a background, or are you like in the island?
No, yeah, I was joking that I'm working from, you know, my home in Hawaii, but that's just a pipe dream.
So we'll amend the meeting minutes to reflect that Makoto is present.
Yep,
So, great.
got it.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. I was late also.
Right, you're talking about the fencing over by the lookout?
No, talking about the community garden. Yeah. And Kathleen, I think I certainly agree with that, and we'll do everything we can, but you know, we have to try to be lean, and I'll see what I can come up with and I'll give you guys a report next month on, you know, if I was able to find.
How big are the beds?
4x8. Do you say how big are they?
Yeah.
4x8, I think.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the weeds here, but I will tell you I have a whole huge stack of good cedar, that all those big trees that used to be in front of my house, and they're all dried out, you know, and I'm going to use some of them, but I have a bunch of leftover stuff. I can't, you know, there's not enough there. And so I'm willing to kind of donate some materials there. So,
okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's nice. Great.
It's like 2-inch thick cedar. So
okay.
It'll be
I
there
saw a
forever.
post on Facebook where there was a bunch of people that were looking to volunteer, and so maybe that might be a good marriage, your cedar boards and volunteers.
Yeah.
We've got the ant farm involved, and you know, a plan in place, but they are having to charge an hourly rate. And maybe if we had a few more volunteers and the ant farm was there to kind of be the foreman of the project and coordinate it, it might save some hours that way. So that's a good suggestion.
What's the time frame that you're looking at for that?
The sooner the better. People are wanting, you know, they're already planting, so we're going to have to work around their planting. But Neil thought they could get in there and get those posts out without disrupting, you know, what people have planted. So.
I was just out there today, and one of the short boards, not the long ones, was completely detached and lying kind of in the pathway.
Okay.
Right close to the eastern gate.
Yeah, I think mine are like 2 by, you know, they're big, and I think they're at least 6, but I think they might even be 8 foot long. So I think they would work for your needs, at least for some, you know, whatever's the worst. Yeah.
For the sideboards, not the posts, right?
Well, and you could also, they're 2-inch posts. You could, you know, you don't necessarily need to have 4x4 posts. You could, you know, cut up, you know, some actual 2x4s, not 1.5 by 3.5, 2x4. You know, you could just kind of cut them longwise. So if I knew what is needed, I could, you know, bring them over, help out. I'm glad to help out. So let me know.
Okay, I'll follow up with you about that, get a little more
Yeah.
information. Okay.
I also wanted to mention that, you know, the about, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches around the outside of the fence of the garden still looks totally like a dead zone. And I didn't know whether, I know we talked about that last year, but I don't know why something wouldn't grow in there unless they had sprayed again more recently. But what do you think, Dawn? Have you noticed that?
No, I didn't really look that closely. What I really looked at were all the weeds in my garden. I immediately,
In my own yard.
Yeah.
I was like, oh crap.
I know they did. I walked by the dog park today, and I noticed they had a sign up that they had just sprayed. I believe it said something about where the dye is, but then I didn't see any dye. But I just assumed it was along the fence line
At
of the
Boris-
dog park.
I feel confident Joe would have let me know if they had any plans, and they would have put signs up,
Yeah,
you know.
sure.
Huh. Well, okay.
And anything else on the community gardens?
Yeah, just a couple questions. How many beds are in the community garden?
67.
Wow.
And we have only about 4 left this year, which last year we had a few more than that didn't get rented, and so we got a lot of participation this year.
Good.
And then another question. So where is this community garden that you're talking about?
You know where Bornstedt Park is?
Yes.
It's in the, what would you call that? Let's see, the southwest
West,
corner.
Okay.
behind the house.
I thought there was a community garden on 26, right by the Stagecoach restaurant, or?
You're talking about where the ant
Ant Farm Garden, yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Oh,
that, yeah, you said the ant farm, so I was thinking about that. Okay.
they use that for garden, Sam. But yeah, you're right. Yep.
Thank you.
So we have 67 gardens.
Yeah,
So at $15 a piece, that brings us in over $1,000.
18 bucks a piece. But we have bought dirt, so every year we've supplied dirt.
Uh-huh.
I want to say that was just under $400 this year. And then,
Huh.
and then usually there's a few, like I'm hearing the hose is not in great shape. And sometimes
Mhm.
somebody will donate one. You know, last year somebody did. I've donated one the year I was there. I've donated a couple nozzles, but sometimes I need to go out and buy a new nozzle or something. But that's why I'm estimating that we might have $500 or so towards the project, and then next year another 500 that we could, like I say, do a journal entry. But we, you know, to really do this right, we have to come up with something, and so I'm not sure if, you know, Parks Maintenance might be able to pitch in there.
Just so you guys know, I'm gonna eat my dinner, so I'm gonna black my screen out, but I'm still here. Okay.
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 Okay, now we can talk about her.
Okay, so is there any more comments on the community? Oh, I will just say I've got a couple hoses. Fairly new hoses, but I've kind of switched over to those collapsible lightweight ones. So I have some hoses to donate to that are in pretty good shape.
That'd be great. Anything we can do to save
yeah.
some money over there would be great.
Yeah. Is there any other comments on the community garden? No. And Makoto, we already went over the Moda Assist results. We, close second, but no cigars. So
What do you think happened there?
I think they were just a little more organized. Honestly, I was telling everybody I'm gonna call and one, congratulate them, but two, find out, what they did. Because one of the things that may have happened is they may have had the schools a lot more involved.
I heard somebody posted something about that.
Yeah.
That because the schools were let out here, the teachers
Well, yeah, they were let out there too, but they may have organized ahead of time, and the teachers may have been just reminding the kids to vote every day, and the school district put it on their Facebook page for us, but it didn't, I think I would work with them a little bit more closely. They didn't want to send it out necessarily on Parent Square, but I think there could have been things we could have done to communicate with the teachers to see if we could rally them a little bit. But they also, their population's a little bit bigger than ours, and I guess that could be enough if everybody, but they didn't appear to be quite as engaged on social media, but there may just have been some pages that we weren't you know, we didn't
Yeah,
see.
you know, I didn't realize, but the city's website, the City of Sandy's website, actually, I think has like 7,000 people or something. And I was posting it on all the ones that I'm, you know,
Yeah.
community events and this and that. And those all have like, you know, 2,000, you know, less than 3,000 people and stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think I can post on City of Sandy. So
I posted really frequently on there.
yeah.
And then we slowed down a little bit when, you know, things started to happen with the virus, and there's some things that needed to take precedence. And,
sure, yeah.
but, you know, Jeff and I coordinated, and we did post some, you know, we kept posting, but I wasn't posting every day at that point.
Yeah.
But it did seem like once it was posted a few times, it started to really go out onto other people's pages, and
Right.
it was in the other community groups.
But what happens with Facebook is that
You
most people's settings only, you know, you might have like, you know, 300 friends, but what you find out is that your Facebook post actually goes out to only about 20 to 25 of your friends, your most frequent, you know, whatevers. And so, you know, so, you know, you send it out and you think, oh, it's going to all these people. Well, it's really not. And that's the hard part. But anyway, it was, you know, and it's also possible that, I don't know anything about St. Helens, but it's possible they didn't, you know, this may have been, you know, they may not have a lot of parks. And so there might've been, you know, this kind of be their, you know, one and only, or their, you know, maybe they have two and this is one of them. I mean, that's obviously a lot more, you know, with everybody else that may have parks in their neighborhood or whatever, it may not have been as pressing as Mount St. Helens or St. Helens is. I don't know. But yeah, let's find out what and also I think it should have been that Moda, you know, so like a lot of these things, they kind of tier it to, you know, the votes compared to the, you know, the percentage of votes compared to the population, so that you know, so that you don't skew it with different population sizes and all.
They try, you know, that's their goal, is to match the cities fairly closely. So, and I want to, there was, towards the very end, as they had some issues kind of launching this year, and a city dropped out, and then they added a city at the last minute. And I want to say that it was St. Helens. And so they may have had to go with a city with, you know, I think they have a couple thousand more people or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, like I said, in the end, a nice town in Oregon is going to get help with a park. And that's important. That's a plus. So
they might have gotten some assistance tomorrow, or whenever you talk to the council member that you were going to talk to. I'd be curious to know if they got a lot of buy-in from Rainier. So they share a lot of things with Rainier, including their fire department, and Rainier is just down the road from them.
Yep.
And so they may have gotten a lot of votes out of that area as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, good on
there was, I don't know if you all saw the posts on there, but you know, there was posts from Jared Rose, who's kind of one of those real, you know, go get 'em kind of guy. And he was like, we should just go build one of these things ourselves. And, you know, I think he's a great go-getter. And as it would be a, you know, somebody we really need to kind of recruit as a kind of a, you know, potential volunteer in the parks, because he's got a lot of energy. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, I could reach out to him about the garden. I got to talk.
Yeah, there you go, because that's real pressing. And I kind of tried to explain to him that it was going to take a little bit more effort. You know, we couldn't just go out there with a bunch of, you know, 2x4s and, you know, or, you know, he was posting like, you know, this playground costs $15,000. This costs, you know, he was posting potential playgrounds and stuff. Yeah. Good, you know, good effort, but, you know, yeah.
And I got to check with Ant Farm and find out if they can work with, you know, they may have to go through the volunteer process with Ant Farm in order to be able to work with them from a liability point of view. I'll have to check all that out. Well, I can get them on the cities.
Obviously, I was just a city volunteer.
Yeah. Uh-oh. My internet connection is unstable, or somebody's is. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can get him on board as a city volunteer. There's a little bit more of a process now. Not a big deal. It doesn't take a big deal or anything, but anybody that we might want to be pairing up with the Ant Farm, I can do that and connect them with their project manager.
Good.
Yeah, and that might save us some money. So let's see what we can do.
Is Ant Farm asking for money for labor?
Yes,
Yes?
yes. Yeah, they're asking for $45 an hour. You know,
Okay.
yeah.
Per person?
No, I think that's just
Okay.
in total. Yeah.
Oh, that's not a biggie.
No.
Okay, any other comments on the Moda Assist or the community gardens? Should we go into the staff, the master plan update? Don, do you want to take the lead on that?
I haven't heard much lately, so I'll defer that back to you.
Well, what I know is, we had the survey. Obviously there was the survey at the last public open house meeting. It was online. In my opinion, I don't think it was well advertised throughout Facebook for people to fill it out.
I did post
with
it.
Facebook,
I did post it quite a few times, and I actually posted it along with some of my Moda Assist postings as well.
Good.
But the window was kind of short, I think.
Yeah. Well, with Facebook,
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. Welcome to the meeting. Welcome to the meeting, Kelly. Can you hear us?
He will. Take him a second.
I think you just click the volume button or whatever.
So yeah, so evidently the, survey has closed. So I assume they're compiling the results of that survey. I don't have a date yet for our next meeting, technical meeting. I kind of don't remember off the top of my head when that is. Do you remember, Sarah?
I don't. I haven't had much of an update. I think that Tanya has been reaching out a little bit. So hopefully I'll have something more for you in May. I know the next public meeting was supposed to be during the Longest Way Parkway. Hopefully we're going to be able to do that. But everything's a little fluid right now. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We may have a
figure
little.
out how we can do that, like people just remotely drive by some, one party at a time, or, I don't know. Hopefully we're not doing this then, but.
Kelly, can you hear us?
If we are. What's that?
I was just seeing if Kelly could hear us yet. Yeah? All right, good. All right.
Yeah, kind of figure out some sort of a remote, I think we need to kind of prepare well for that, so that if we're not able to do it, that we've got an alternate input process and, information sharing process that is going to work. It's all less than optimal when you can't, do it in person with people, but anyway.
Yeah. All right.
So the,
welcome, Kelly.
Welcome. Thanks for coming, Kelly. So
yeah, my pleasure.
We sent you a bunch of questions and we got your answers. And what I wanted to kind of start off with was kind of just an opportunity for you to kind of kick it off with whatever you wanted to, followed by folks here those questions were off the top of my head, but I wanted to kind of give everybody the opportunity to kind of pick your brain a little bit about the processes and the, any other general questions they have when it comes to the planning process and parks and trails. So go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, sure. The answers that I provided were kind of quick. So as I said in there, if there's anything that you guys want us to explore further, I can always look into it more, or I can talk to the city attorney as well if you have questions. One of the big things and one of the difficult things with acquiring parkland, unless we just go out and purchase land, is that a lot of case law out there would show that unless you're going to use eminent domain, that it's very difficult to make a developer give a portion of their property, which it does make it very challenging, just because if there's a prime opportunity to get land donated or dedicated, I can see why would we want to do that. So I think just from kind of looking around what other cities have done, I think one way to help accomplish that is to, and I'm sure you guys are looking into doing this as part of the parks master plan, but really increasing the amount that they have to pay for the parks fee in lieu, so that it makes it very difficult for them to just opt out all the time. Because right now, what we're obviously seeing, I think all of you would agree with this, is that the amount for our parks fee in lieu is too low, because everybody's basically just opting out and paying that, which means the land value is much higher. And then I think, Kathleen, you would have a lot of experience with this. When we bought Bornstead Park, that land was very expensive to just go out and purchase. So I think one of the big things we need to do is look at how much per acre we're charging for the opt-out, because the $241,000 per acre is not nearly high enough. It's kind of being shown. So I think that's one of the important things. I think looking at our code and updating it to be more realistic with current case law, so that if you guys do define in your parks master plan update where you want park locations to be, how we could incentivize essentially developers to work with us instead of just kind of deciding we're not going to play ball and we're going to basically do what we want and then we'll just give you some money, because that's what's happening in a lot of the cases, I think, around town.
What cases are they happening in? Or is there
Well,
some other place besides Bailey Meadows?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. I guess what I'm alluding to is that if there are other cases out there, I think they're just going to opt out and pay the fee in lieu. We have had a few. I think it is happening in at least one other location, the Sandy Crest PD, which I think you guys as a board reviewed and gave your input, which is off of Jacoby Road. They're actually going to move forward. I think it's about 50 to 70 houses, and they're going to donate 25% of their land, but it's going to be the very hilly, the land that's basically not worth very much is what they're going to basically give to you guys. And you would also ask for another access point, which we had told them if we're going to basically give you outstanding design, which is very subjective, you would have to, at a very minimum, have a connection down to the future trail connector. So they did agree to that, but then we also said, I think the Parks Board had recommended at that time, we'd also like a little additional land for like a park in a flat area there. And they said, well, we don't really want to do that. We'll just pay the fee in lieu. So I think that's another case of where if you guys as a board decide you do want some parkland there, that I don't think they're going to be very cooperative, is my guess.
Does anybody remember what we... I'm sorry. It's my birthday, so I've been...
happy birthday.
And everybody's been calling all day long. Anyway, yeah, I don't know I don't recall that we asked for parkland. I know we asked for the trail thing because we had Cascadia and those other ones nearby, and there wasn't a park identified.
I think we did. I think we did up by the trailhead. There was a couple of lots. We weren't sure if they were lots or if they were property that was available to us.
Yeah, that's what I remember is you guys wanted some land by the trailhead. And so we passed that information on to them, and they said, oh, thanks for the input, but we're not really interested in that. We'll just pay the fee in lieu. And so I guess that's what I'm saying is the fee in lieu amount just needs to be increased, because everybody's basically saying, oh yeah, we'll just pay this. We don't really care.
Sure. It's interesting. I didn't realize there was that big of a discrepancy on that.
What did I miss?
Can we base it on a cost of living and inflation as well? Like continually, like every year it changes?
I think you could do that. Yeah. If you like set it to like a CPI index, that's how our SDCs increase. I think that that would be my recommendation of how to do it. Yeah. Right now, it's been the same amount since I've worked here since 2011. I don't know. And in 2011, honestly, people wanted to donate land instead of pay the amount. But now, over the last couple of years, land's become a lot more valuable, as all of you know. But Kathleen would probably have a better understanding of when it was increased last. I'm not too sure.
I don't know if that's
well, I have the park methodology. Park SDC methodology is dated 2013.
Right.
Yeah.
The SDC was certainly updated in the last like 6-7 years. I guess what I'm referring to is the fee in lieu.
Oh, I just assumed that was increased at the same time. Maybe not.
It
Okay.
might have been. I would have to look
Yeah.
back at the ordinance.
Yeah.
Regardless, that's still 7 years ago.
Right, sure. And land prices being what they are.
Right.
So, yeah, and there's some questions about planned unit developments that I think that the Sandy, what'd you say, call it crest thing, that might get answered when we talk about the PD things, public planned developments.
So what's the process of raising the fee in lieu?
What's the process?
Yeah.
You would just have to bring an ordinance with a staff report before the city council and make a change to the master fee schedule. Because that's where it's located right now, is on the master fee schedule. And then if you wanted to tie something like a CPI index, you would just have that as one of your what do you call it? One of your findings within the ordinance adoption.
Now, is that fee in lieu of determination process, whatever, tied to the SDC methodology, or are they kind of separate things?
I think they're separate, but that's a great question, and I don't have a full grasp on that. And I think that's where you'd want to ask like somebody from the FCS group or something like that writes those. Because like when Scott Lazenby, when he did the last few methodology updates, they're written decent. I'm not saying they're like terrible. But in talking to the gentleman with FCS, he said there's a few flaws in them that if you had somebody that is used to writing SDC methodologies, that they wouldn't have messed up on. Kind of like Mining Park and Tupper Park being exempted. Right. He said there's no reason that should have been put in there.
Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Do you have any other kind of overall stuff there, Kelly?
Not really. I mean, the one thing I just want to assure all of you about is I really want to work with the Parks Board, and when you guys have input to include that. One of the hard parts for us is like at the pre-app stage, that's when everybody wants to know what all the city requirements are. The hard part about that is then you guys give your input, which is great, but then their proposal changes when they submit for land use. So then when then you get a notice from us for the land use proposal, sometimes you'll notice it's changed pretty significantly, and therefore maybe your comments will have changed. So I think one of the main things is we probably should just work together on figuring out when you give your comments on the pre-apps to make it very known that these are kind of preliminary and that they could change based on what's submitted at the land use stage.
Kelly, what's been hard, I think, too, is at the pre-app stage, sometimes there's a lot of questions on the board's part. Which makes it hard for us to give you good notes sometimes.
Yeah, that was the case last month. We had 2 to look at, but we had a bunch of questions about it, and so it was a little harder to, give input, I think. Isn't that kind of what I think that was the consensus, that especially Don, you were kind of asking a bunch of questions about it. And
right, and there wasn't much, there wasn't even if I remember correctly, there wasn't even a compass mark on it to tell us which way was north. There was nothing that would explain what any of the symbols meant. It was just really hard to try and decipher a lot of the issues associated with it. And we spent a lot of time going, well, where is that? What is that? What do you think that is? And
yeah.
Do you remember what developments those were?
It was the one by City Hall, and then the one by
Sandy Woods.
The Sandy Wood.
Phase 2.
Yeah.
And Emily was saying a lot of times you guys don't even get a key that would.
Like a legend. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What we get at the pre-app stage is pretty pathetic sometimes, to be quite honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the one by, oh, sorry, go ahead, Don.
I was gonna say, I get it. It's hard. I was in a pre-app yesterday, as a matter of fact, regarding a 91-acre subdivision, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like, well, this is kind of what we think we want, and here's a drawing that kind of shows what we want, and what were those requirements again? And it's it's a whole lot of jockeying to try and figure out how little we can get away with, or how little the developer can get away with. And so everything
Exactly.
is extremely vague. You know, nobody wants to make a commitment. Nobody wants to spend the money because they want to determine whether they want to even move forward with the project. So they want to put as little into it at that point as they can. So I understand that. It's just difficult to give meaningful input sometimes, and it gets a little frustrating sometimes.
And with regard to, I will respond to one of the, I think the challenge that we have, because what I heard you say, help me out if I got it wrong, was that we should really focus more on trying to buy land instead of asking for land dedication. And the challenge with that is like you want to buy it before, you know, it's annexed in when it's cheap. And so, but you don't know where that's, you know, you don't know what's going to develop. And so trying to buy it, you know, before, you know, so then you buy this land that, you know, may or may not ever, you know, develop. And then, you know, that's not really a neighborhood park. You know, I mean, I think that makes sense when you're talking about a community park, sports fields and things like that, where people are obviously going to drive to it. But if you're talking about neighborhood parks, that's a little bit harder to do. And then you're, you know, then you're kind of trying to figure out, you know, if you do go out to buy land, where do you buy it? Unless you wait until it's annexed in, and then you know, oh, they're going to do the subdivision over here, and then but then the price goes way up. But you're right, having a fee in lieu of that reflects that higher price of it being within the city, and you know,
it should be based on the estimated post development estimated price. That's what the fee in lieu should be.
Yes.
Because that's what the developers are weighing. You know, how much is this land? Can we sell this land for? And how much money do we have to give? And right now it's really imbalanced, right? But if we make it so that it's a toss up, or even more so that they would rather give us the land than pay the fee, then, so it's got to be based on that, that value of the land post developed estimate.
And on the fee question on this fee in lieu of, Kelly, you said that the only legitimate use is for parkland property purchase, environmental assessments prior to property purchase, closing costs, and surveying costs associated with property purchase. Now, when we make them do parkland dedication, they have requirements to like put in sidewalk and grading and all that when they do the parkland dedication under 17.86.
Yeah, that's something that I think, let me think here. That's something that I think we did always make them do. If you remember, we used to make them, when I started working here too, we used to make them do the half-street improvements along the park. And then a gentleman by the name of Aaron Smith, who was a developer to the south of Bornstead Park.
Yeah, I remember all
challenged us on that actually, and went to court.
Yeah.
And the city lost.
Yeah.
So he prevailed.
Yeah. And so that's a good point, because so when we're talking about fee in lieu of folks, you know, we have the cost of acquire, let's see, at least for, or maybe not fee in lieu of, what maybe I mean the SDCs for park development.
Right.
You know, we end up having to pay for, you know, I think our park SDCs are based on just building a park, you know, playgrounds and basketball hoops or whatever. And in fact, we don't really have reflected in there the cost of building the roads that we're going to be responsible because we have to do the half street improvement. But going back to what I was just mentioning.
That's correct, Kathleen, from my understanding as well, yes.
But like one thing, and you know, this came up a little bit in the Bailey Meadows, but with they are required to do the grading and all still, and the sidewalk, right?
If the city council makes that a condition.
No, I mean, that's in your code right now. I mean, it is.
It is, but I don't think that's a condition right now on the Bailey Meadows
I don't want to get into Bailey Meadows, obviously, that's a whole different subject, but that's in our code. And so my point is that if that's something that we require in the parkland dedication policy, like before you give us this land, we don't want just like you stacked a bunch of dirt on top of it, used it to store all your crap on, blah, 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 and here it is, you know, you're welcome. So I want to make sure that if they're required to kind of do some grading and a sidewalk or something, that our fee in lieu of, if we get a fee in lieu of for that, it should be also include those costs to kind of at least, so like if you're comparing apples and apples, there's parkland dedication and they have to bring it up to this standard with, graded ground and stuff like that, and a sidewalk versus, fee in lieu of the cost of acquiring it and, putting in the sidewalk and grading it should all be able to be paid for with the fee in lieu of. You see what I'm saying? So that you're looking at apples and apples. Did I make sense? You're looking.
Yeah, I think we'd have to get an evaluation from our attorney on that. I agree with the grading portion and the phase 1 environmental assessment. If they donate the land, the code does say that. However, for that to be conditioned is we have to make sure it's in the conditions list in the final order. Because even if it's in the code, if it's not put within the final order for the land use review, then it's not a condition of approval.
But when you're doing your staff report, you're assessing whether or not they met that actual code proposal, right?
I mean, that got added later on.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Bailey Meadows. Yeah, I'm not talking
Oh,
about
you mean
Bailey Meadows.
typically? You mean typically?
Typically, yeah, typically is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Typically that would be
Okay.
analyzed.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm just trying to say is that, when we're comparing park dedication versus fee in lieu of, we need to make, what your response to our question said was that the fee in lieu of did not include the sidewalks and the grading, which are
I don't think
required. And so we want to make sure that we're kind of, when we're comparing those two things, that we're including the same amount of improvements, the sidewalk and the grading, when we come, so that we can get the costs, like you were saying, increase the fee in lieu of to, make it more, more attractive to donate land versus, so to do that, we have to make sure we're including the same kind of costs.
Yeah, you'd want to check with FCS or who's doing the Parks Master Plan again? I keep blanking on their name.
Environmental ESA.
Yeah, ESA.
Some consultants, I think, working on the other stuff. Yeah.
So you'd want to check with the ESA or the SCS group, but from my understanding is that unless the developers do the grading and sidewalk, that would have to come out of the improvement portion, which is the SDC and not the fee in lieu. That's my understanding of it. But you could probably get that verified by the consultant that you're working with.
Because if we can't include the cost of doing that in the fee in lieu, then the fee in lieu is always going to be less than the development, than the parkland dedication.
Well, that's where we got to look at if we have the appropriate SDC amount in there. And then, to get them to do the additional work for us, maybe it becomes an SDC credit for them.
I think that is what it would be.
Well, let's kind of take that up with the consultants and see how we can kind of make that work for us. Yeah. Okay.
Typically, how most SDCs work is that from working in 3 different jurisdictions, is you do get a credit if it's in the capital improvement plan, and if it's not in the capital improvement plan, then typically you don't get a credit. But yeah, I would just check with your consultant on that.
Okay, so are there other questions? Did people kind of read through the answers that we got, or do you want to just kind of go through the list of questions I did, or do you guys have additional questions? How do you want to proceed?
I thought the responses that Kelly provided us were pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a really, I don't know, a lot of this really depends on who we're working with. I'll just be very honest with you. Some developers and organizations are really good to work with. I'm not going to name any names, and then some aren't. And the ones that are usually more interested in, whatever the Parks Board's input or the planning department's input is. They're more willing to try to achieve the goals or the input. And then some developers really don't care, and they just keep to the law, and they don't really like to play ball. They do their development, and then they're outside of the city, and they're not part of the town anymore. So as all of you realize, I mean, I'm not saying anything here that none of you don't realize, but so it really depends on who the developer is and how interested they are in making Sandy better, or if they're just interested in making a quick buck and leaving.
Thank you. So one of the things that kind of came up was when and what is the process for developing code language for the already adopted parks, trails, and open space? And then I guess also for the future parks, I guess I'll add that in. That wasn't part of the question. The reason that I'm asking a little bit about that, I'm not so much concerned too much about the existing parks that are identified in our zoning map as parks, trails, and open space. But for, whatever that language is, it's going to be important in the master plan, because are we requiring neighborhood parks to have parking lots? Are we, what are kind of all the requirements that, as far as setbacks, or, I don't know, Kelly, you could probably think of all the things that you guys usually require for particular zones. You probably have setbacks, you have, I don't know, driveways, you have, who knows, I don't know, all the stuff, bits and bobs that you have that you require of a particular zone. But for me, the parking stuff was, one of them, the utilities, water access and stuff for parks. Those are the kind of things that in the master plan are going to cost money to do. And so it's important that we kind of know going into the master plan, when we identify parks, kind of what are the costs involved, or no, we don't have to bring water to them and we don't need to provide parking. We can provide on-street parking, and that, that's a different kettle of fish and a different cost basis. So it's kind of important to kind of understand a little bit about what our code language requirements will be for those zones going into the master plan. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at 1786 as part of your master plan process and tell us what you want to change in it. That is the one section of the code where the Parks Board, I think, has pretty much most of the say. I mean, I don't have a big preference one way or the other. If you guys want to make some sweeping code changes to that, and then I'll just run them by our legal counsel and just make sure that we're not violating any statutes, and then we'll try to get them adopted. I would say that anything parking related or any criteria, just like the transportation systems plan or anything like that, any criteria you want to be able to stick and you want us to be able to evaluate condition, we need to make sure that that criteria is adopted into 1786. Because as we've all heard recently, if it's just in the comp plan or just in the Parks Master Plan, it's more of aspirational than requirements. So we'll just want to make sure that whatever you guys want to have as requirements are definitely adopted into the development code.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just stick them all into 1786 if it has anything to do with parks. I honestly wouldn't muddle it by trying to put parking stuff in 1798 and improvement stuff in 1784. I would just put it all in 1786, so it's very clear. Here are the regulations when you're donating or developing parkland in Sandy.
Yeah, but I don't think that's really the question she was asking. I think she was asking more of what are the planning department requirements when we develop a parkland. For instance, when we did Bornstead Park in the master plan, it shows a parking lot, but there's certainly no parking lot there now. Was that required as part of the master plan for the park?
We had to get a code variance for that. We had to go through the whole code variance process, right, Kelly?
I think so, yeah. I was the one that worked on it. It's been a while ago now.
Parking lot included, or to get it from having to be built?
I think we did the parking lot because of the use of that home as the community center. You know, in order to hold weddings or whatever, we felt like that parking lot was needed.
Okay, but were we originally required to build a parking lot regardless of the community center just because it's a park?
No, because there was no park land. There wasn't a park zone at that time. And so then they developed this park zone, but they didn't, and this was after Bornstead, and they didn't develop any code associated with this zone. So
yeah, so how it's currently laid out is if you have for example a community recreation building, then you have to provide a certain number of spaces per square feet.
Okay,
so that what Kathleen's alluding to is that since that Bornstead Park has a building that would be able to be rented out or used as a recreation area or whatever the use is, there's a number of parking spaces that need to be provided per square feet of that building.
But because
the code currently doesn't require off-street parking for parks. And
Okay.
I would recommend not including that.
Yeah, I don't want to include that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So that if you as a board decide in an individual park you want parking spaces, great. But
Right.
I wouldn't want anything in the code that dictates that you have to install one.
Yeah.
I will tell you that Sandy may be the exception to that rule. A lot of communities require parking lots.
Yeah.
And I'm
You know what?
happy that you don't, because it oftentimes it adds more cost than value.
Well, and I mean, it's kind of pros and cons because, people right now, since we don't have the development going on there by the garden, all the splash pad parking folks have a very small area to park in. Now that stuff is getting developed on the other side, it's probably a little bit better. I don't go to the splash pad, but, I know at first everybody was complaining about all the, parking there at the splash pad from out of town or wherever.
Right.
It'll get better once they develop that, whatever side, west side. But yeah, like what kind of lighting are requirements? What are the utility, water and sewer stuff? So that's the kind of, because, like with the streets and the half street improvement, how does that work for the, utilities also? So those are all things that we're going to need to think about in our Parks Master Plan.
Right. And I'm assuming at some point we're going to have to do the half street improvements on the west side of Bornstead too, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Probably on the north side as well.
Yeah. Never cheap. No, just back houses up to the north side. That'll take care of it for us.
I mean, I would encourage you. I mean, in 1786, that diagram that shows shows the roads around the park. I would encourage you to really evaluate that and see if that's what you want, because I think that's a great thing if it's a really large park.
Yeah.
But on some of your smaller parks, my guess is not only because of costs, but also because of other factors like topography and stuff. I don't think we would really want to make that always the case. So
Right.
You might want to tie that diagram or something like that diagram to a certain park acreage.
Yeah.
And leave it maybe a little bit more vague if it's like a mini park or like a tot lot. I don't know. I would think about that one.
Yeah. Well, we're trying to get away from mini parks and tot lots anyway. So, I mean, that's the whole intent of, the only reason we ended up with all those things we had was because developers, not the kinds we're having to deal with now, but the other developers wanted to have a park in their area and there wasn't one in the master plan and they wanted to build a small tot lot and we let them. So that's kind of how we got a lot of the ones we have now.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to bring up storm drainage facilities, and it sounds like you guys, it says planning division staff would like to adopt aesthetic code regulations for stormwater facilities. Can you talk a little bit about your hope to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we would love to adopt something that would make them a little bit more aesthetically pleasing with a nicer fence style and anything else that anybody can think of that they would want to adopt into it. Because right now, basically, all it has to have is the plants essentially for the treatment of the stormwater, and then it just has to collect and have an overflow device. And then I think typically the Public Works Department has them put up like a chain link fence so that people don't get in there and trample down the plants when they're, juvenile plants. And then also, if it fills up with a lot of water, we want to prevent kids and stuff from potentially drowning in them. But I do think there's an opportunity to make them a little bit nicer and kind of integrate them into subdivisions and into parks a little bit better. We don't have anything currently on the docket to do that. You asked the question there, and I was just saying we have internally talked about that in the past, that we'd love to make them a little bit more aesthetically pleasing than.
Well, it sounds like they're going to be in almost every neighborhood because you're requiring on-site stormwater detention, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only time that they're not in neighborhoods is when the developer decides to put large pipes in under the streets. But that's very expensive. So most developers just decide to do the above ground stormwater detention ponds. So yes, you're correct. I think they'll be in almost all subdivisions from here forward.
And sometimes if we do have in the future have a park land, a park dedication, spot there in this subdivision, and they need a stormwater detention pond, sometimes it does make sense to try to co-locate those because you get a a little bit more area. You get a little more natural space. It's, you know, landscape together. You know, I don't know. How does everybody else feel about that? I'm sure we probably can't require that, and maybe sometimes it doesn't make sense as far as topography and what. But what are people's thoughts
No,
on
if you
that?
can co-locate them, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think if you had it in the code, you might be able to require it. I can't say that as a definite, but I don't think it's a bad idea. I do think that if like it's part of a larger park, I would just consider only, and they're like dedicating land, I would just consider the idea of only giving them like partial credit for the stormwater section, because obviously,
Yeah, it's not.
or maybe no credit.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
No credit, but I think it you know,
yeah.
can encourage them to use it, and that may save them a little bit of space, a little bit of developable space.
Do they have to put sidewalk or any kind of improvements around it, you know, for public?
They
Other
do,
than the
yeah.
fence?
Yeah, they
That
do.
perhaps street improvements.
Okay, so that, you know, that some of that stuff might, you know, you were kind of trying to figure out, you know, how can we get a carrot, you know, and kind of sweeten the pot for land dedication. Those kind of things might be where we look for that.
Are there specific types that are allowed or not allowed of stormwater retention facilities?
I'm not an expert on it, to be honest. Thomas Fisher is a lot more up to date on this stuff. But basically, we use the Portland stormwater manual, and then we do have higher rainwater counts out in Sandy. We get about 80 inches of rain a year, whereas Portland gets about 46, I believe. So we do base the rainfall on a much higher count. But other than that, they can use all the same devices or different facilities that you'd be able to use in Portland. So the main two that are used are the big ponds in the big subdivisions or the underground infiltration systems. There are like smaller rainwater box systems that we allow, but typically those are for like one small commercial building or one single family home or something like that.
Okay.
So it's usually just the big pond. I think there's one in Dawn's neighborhood right down the street, actually.
There is.
Or
Yeah,
the
I've
underground
seen them all
facility.
over. Right, attended the presentation by a environmental group that deals with water runoff or just runoff water. There's a big presentation, but Jordan, the city manager, and the mayor Pulliam attended it as well, so they would be good resources as well for reference on that. But
Any other questions?
I was just going to say, I think there is definitely an opportunity to integrate them better. And if you're putting them by parks, I think you could really make them nicer features.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
especially if it gets some of our half street improvements done or something.
There you go. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is like, how can we do a carrot here and sweeten the pot?
Yeah, no, they have to do half street improvements with the sidewalks, street trees, street lights, everything by their storm pond.
Mm-hmm,
so yeah, you're correct.
And there just happens to be a park right next to it. So win-win.
Right.
The planned unit development. Everybody understand what that is? That's that kind of different new, well, it's not new at all, but it's I don't know, it's something where the existing zoning that we have kind of gets set aside and it's a different process. Now, let me ask you, is this planned unit development, like when I talked to the Eugene planners about their clear and objective process and all that, is the planned unit development process require the whole clear and objective standards?
No, not to the same extent, because they're asking for basically variances and dimensional changes. Yeah, exactly.
Change. Okay.
So you're not under the same scrutiny of clear and objective that you are in most.
Okay. And so, yeah, so they basically can kind of bring forward this plan that kind of throws out the zoning of, like single family residential and propose pretty high density, medium and high density stuff instead of single family. But they have to come up with outstanding. It has to be, tell us something about outstanding. I forget the word.
So how our code works, and not all there's a lot of municipalities that their code's a lot different than ours on PDs. But how our code works is that if you propose a PD, you have to dedicate 25% of the gross acreage as open space. And because you do that, you get the benefit of requesting dimensional changes and quantitative changes, such as setbacks, lot sizes. You get to have different unit types, so you wouldn't only have to put in single family homes. You could put in townhouses or multifamily. So basically, you get all those things granted to you, or at least you get to request all those things before the planning commission because you're giving up 25% of your land as open space.
Right.
Now,
But if 25% of their land is already steep and wet, and that's what they're giving us, they can't develop on that anyway, right?
yeah, the code still allows them to get the quantitative changes and the use types changed if they dedicate 25% of their land, even if
Right,
it is
but-
the steep and wet stuff.
But do we have to accept that property?
I'm pretty sure you do, yeah, with how the code's currently written.
That sounds like something that needs to be tightened up.
Yeah. I know in some jurisdictions you have the option not to, and then they have to form a homeowners association, and they end up having to be the ones that carry the financial burdens of that property, whether it's the insurance or the maintenance on it, all those things that go with it.
Yeah,
So
there has not been, well, I'll take that back. There's only been one, I believe, in the 9 years I've worked here with the 20 subdivisions or so that have been developed. I think there's only been one that created a homeowners association, and then it didn't even last a year. And it was because at any time the homeowners association, so what happens even if they create a homeowners association is once that folds, then any of the land that was owned by the homeowners association goes into a surplus bank by the county, and then the county basically gives it to us.
Right.
So once the homeowner association,
no matter what.
unless the homeowner association stays, then we end up with it no matter what. Almost, it's kind of a sucky thing.
Yeah.
So the other part of it, to follow up what Kathleen was asking, is if you can prove that you're doing outstanding development or design, which it's very subjective what that means even, then you get a density bonus, and then you can do additional units as well.
Jesus.
So on top of all the other density increases, they can get even more, or?
No, on top of being able to modify dimensional standards and the uses, they can also then apply for additional density because they've provided outstanding, hold on one second. What is the
I know,
exact code?
but it say
I mean, why do we do this again? Is this a city ordinance? Why would we do PUDs if it's just basically given a stuff? I mean, it's basically, pro developer, right?
Hold on, I'm moving downstairs.
Like, is there a
Yeah,
point?
it's a city. It's a city ordinance. Most cities do have planned development options.
Okay.
The 3 cities I've worked in all have. Not saying that our code can be modified to be better, but most cities do allow for developments.
Every city I've worked for has them.
Well, who would get the ball rolling on kind of tightening up the language within the PUD things?
Once I have time to do it, it would be me.
Hey, Rob, I'm on it.
Are we going to require a comp plan amendment, or can you just do that through a code amendment?
Code amendment.
Okay.
The existing PDs are already approved, and so nothing would be, we can't go back and retroactively change
Right.
anything on those. But yeah, once we get the code adoption, any future PDs would have to follow the new code.
Do we have one now?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Do we have a PD proposed now?
I know we have 3 or 4 of them that we've had pre-apps on in the last 6 months. With the stock market tumbling and the uncertainty around the housing market, I don't know if any of those will go forward, but we do have 3 or 4 that might go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the pad townhomes or Sandy Woods 2 by chance?
Sandy Woods 2, I don't think is a PD. That's actually just the regular subdivision.
It's the other one that we talked about, the Sandy Crest PD, right?
There's Sandy Crest, there's the Views, which I think will go forward. There's the Bornstead Views, And then I think there's one more. I can't remember what the fourth one's called.
Did we look at Bornstead Views? I remember that name.
Eh,
We did at one
I think
point.
you did, yeah.
Mhm.
That the one that's opposite the, what is it, ridge, something right behind me?
No, that's Marshall Ridge, right
Yeah, no,
behind
you're
you.
right, Dawn. It's just to
Oh.
it's to the east of Bornstead, to the
Right,
south
it's
of
just opposite
Cascadia.
of that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like a dozen units or something like that. Really small.
No. It's like 50 something units.
Oh,
Yeah. It's
So
a
I'm trying to
dozen.
figure
It's a
out-
dozen units that would access Bornstead, and then there's 30 some or 40 some units that would access Apple Parkway in Cascadia Village.
okay.
So from what I understand us, that where we're at with planned developments is that we can't say no to them, and they get to give us, or, give us 25% of what could just be heap steep wet. Not to say there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, like you said, there's some value to that stuff, but on the other hand, they can't develop it anyway. So, it's kind of like getting it off their tax rolls, and then they're able to, if it's like SFR, they can give us 25% of this steep, wet stuff, and then still change SFR to higher densities. Is that right?
Yeah.
And not even have outstanding values. And then if they give us anything what's considered outstanding, they can go even more than the densities.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. You got it.
Wouldn't it be easier just to get rid of the whole PUD thing and then just make developers ask for variances?
I mean, that's an option if the council wanted to get rid of it. I think
would
we'd
that
be one of
safer? Like, it's,
potentially. I mean, I think the downside of it is, it could be viewed as like decreasing flexibility in our code, which I know is always a controversial thing when we do.
but I don't understand what the positive
Upside.
aspect of that
What's
is.
the upside?
Yeah.
I mean, the upside is that you get 25% land dedication. So I think,
Well, but
like,
it's
if you
all-
look,
yeah, I think
if you look at like the
It's not
Bornstead,
next to a ghetto. I mean,
Well, I think the intent there, honestly, for planned developments, as I understand, and it's like with when we're requiring dedication of our parkland, the requirement was that, we're not taking heap steep wet stuff as our parkland, and we really shouldn't be taking 25% of the land. There should be a requirement that of that 25%, I don't know what the number is, 15 or 20% or something like that, but at least, a certain percentage of that should be viable land, usable land, not something that they can't use and get, all they want to do is get it off their tax rolls anyways. It's just kind of a cost to them. I mean, I think that's the intent of planned developments, is that you have these open green spaces that can be used by the surrounding folks that are crowded into, more high density areas, but they've got, it's divided up by these usable green spaces, but, nobody's using, the.
no, that I think that's certainly right. I mean, you wouldn't get an argument for me. I think if you're dedicating 25%, at least 5 or 10% should be areas that aren't over a certain slope and aren't wet. I agree with that. Our code really doesn't, I don't think, currently have any provision on that, but I think that's something we should look at.
when do you think you would get time to address stuff like that and bring it to council?
Probably towards the end of 2020. So there is a goalpost rule too, that if anybody does submit a PD and we're in the process of changing our code, but we haven't officially adopted it, that they get to use the previous code, the existing code. Thank you. Yeah.
So wouldn't it be more efficient or just easier in general to get rid of the PUDs and then come back to and address whatever needs to be fixed and then bring it back in whenever that happens, instead of leaving ourselves open for abuse from developers?
I mean, you could certainly propose that to the city council. Typically with city councils I've probably worked under, I don't know, 12 to 14 or 15 different combinations of city councils over my 15 years. typically they want to have more flexibility in the code. So I haven't seen a lot of examples of where they would want to decrease flexibility, but I mean, you guys, it's your decision. You could put that as a proposal before city council.
So tell me again, I had to get something to drink. What's the outstanding standard? And how do you decide that?
They're really, that's the thing. That's what, so that's what the planning staff, myself and the other two planners struggle with. There is nothing. It just says outstanding or exemplary. Let me see what it says here. Hold on one second.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, no, we struggle with that because people.
It says is outstanding in planned use and design and provides exceptional advantages in living conditions and amenities not found in similar developments constructed under regular zoning. It's in your code. It's in.
Who decides what's outstanding and exemplary?
The
City
judge,
council.
when it goes to court and we get sued again.
City council decides that because it's a city council decision on all planned unit developments. So that's the one thing where most cities don't really mind having PDs in their code, is because it's not a staff level decision. It's not a planning commission decision. It's a city council decision.
Right.
So the elected officials are the ones determining whether they want to approve or deny the PD. It's kind of nice in a sense because it just goes all the way up the chain. It goes to city council. They render a decision, and then say they were to deny it, then it just goes to LUBA and they make a decision. So it's not this whole rigmarole of going through me as the director, then somebody has to appeal to planning commission, somebody has to appeal to council. It just goes right to council. They make a decision, and then either the applicant has to live with it or they can appeal it to LUBA. So.
But if they appeal it to LUBA, I mean, I think we could all agree that this outstanding and exceptional is subjective by nature, especially with the code. If even Lori, I probably think you'd agree that all your city council folks, what each of those people would determine to be outstanding and exceptional is different, to each person on the council. And so if they deny it just because they, in their subjective opinion, feel it's not outstanding and exceptional, or it, they don't really have any basis to deny it to LUBA, right?
Not the PD itself, but they could deny that they're providing exceptional and exemplary living conditions, I think, and deny the density increase.
And I think anytime you're making decisions like that, I think I think even if it goes to LUBA, it becomes a merit question. What's the merit and what's the intent behind it? And so I think as long as you can show the merit, obviously I'm not a LUBA expert, but traditionally that's how those types of decisions are made.
Yeah, I think, and I'm coming at this not from a plan, really I'm looking at it for the parks, all this open parks and open space that we're going to be conceivably inheriting. And what does that mean for our budgets? And, what are the kind of improvements that, it appears like they just get to donate us this land, and it's not parkland, but it kind of walks like parkland and talks like parkland and needs to be maintained like parkland, but it's not parkland, but it's going to cost us to maintain it as parkland. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as a concern that, when we have these PDs, and I think, now that folks understand that they're, what the lucrative, well, let me back up. I think that especially some of our developments that are, as we're building out, some of the less desirable ground that we have out there for development is, on steeper ground, and, there's a bunch of wet, steep ground near it. And so they'll be looking for PDs as a way to kind of, make even, and by that I mean, increase the densities on the stuff they can build on, get rid of the steep stuff off their tax roll. And so that's kind of where I'm a little bit concerned that making that 25% more usable land might, I'm just concerned that we're going to end up with all this land and we don't even have money or anything to, well, let me even back. Like, this is not part of our parks master plan, all these 25% parcels, right?
It's just what we're getting stuck with.
Right, and so it's in addition to what we're trying to plan for managing under a parks master plan. And so, and yet we don't even have, like, you know, you couldn't even use SDCs to, you know, provide a trail or access or anything in here, right? Help me with that, Kelly. How would that work? So they give us 20% of this, and how does it get usable?
Yeah, you'd have to add those areas to your capital improvement plan to then use trail money on them.
Now, though it looks like what some of them have proposed is they proposed their own trail system in there. Is that something?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and they're not getting I don't think they're not getting SDC credits for that. So that's the one nice thing, is that when they do dedicate it, if we like the land they're dedicating 25% of their land. They're proposing like trails and stuff on a couple of those because that's what they're calling as part of their outstanding design. So you're getting some free trails, essentially. You're getting some free land. And then in addition to that, they still have to either dedicate parkland or pay your fee in lieu, and then also still give the SDCs. Mm-hmm. So if the land's in a spot like along the Tickle Creek Trail, like let's just take a couple, for example, Hamilton Ridge, Barlow Ridge subdivision, and Nicholas Glen subdivision, all three of those subdivisions, that's how we acquired the land along the Tickle Creek Trail, was because they're all planned developments and they all dedicated land for the trail system along there. So there has been some benefits from past PDs, although those three PDs are all great examples. There probably are other examples in town where the PDs didn't really give us much valuable land at all. So I think there's pluses and minuses to the PDs. I will say that. I think there's some bad things from them, but.
Don, do you have much experience with PDs and how this affects your park?
Yeah, you know, back in the day, we had a little bit more control over what we took or what we didn't take. And we could actually, you know, resist taking stuff and require higher levels of property that would go, you know, for development. But also, we also found, you know, in some places, and I think of in Gresham, there's a little place called Mossy Tree Development. It was a land, you know, development. They wanted a park. They developed a, you know, their PUD, and they put it in Mossy Tree Park. To this day, it has a swimming pool, has a community building in it, has open space and basketball courts, and it's a private use park. You know, it's only for the residents there to go in there. And believe me, they'll let you know if you don't belong to the neighborhood. They'll chase you out of there with pitchforks. But you know, they can be very frustrating, and it sounds like we need to work a little bit, you know, with Kelly and the council to put a little bit more teeth to it, to, you know, at least set some standards around what we'll accept or won't accept as part of that trade-off, especially for the density bonus, because that's, to me, that's crazy talk that we don't have anything to be able to require anything but the crap land to come to us. And I get the point with Kelly too, that you know, some developers are really, really good, and some developers are really, really just in and out, don't give a rip about the community. They just want to make their own little development as profitable as they can be.
Well, as the city's learning right now, the honor system doesn't work.
No.
So, I mean, there has to be language.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the PD section, I was just looking at it. It says 25% of the total site area within a residential zone, and then it goes on to say, basically, if they donate additional land to that, then the city can decide if they want that land and if they're going to give them for parkland. I'm saying, so the city would decide, the city council will decide if they want to give them a fee in lieu for the additional land above 25%. But then it kind of goes on to just say the open space as part of that 25% can be natural areas, greenways, and it kind of just lists all the stuff that includes. But there's nothing in here that I've ever seen or read, and I'm reading it again right now, that says, like, you know, 5% or 10% has to be, you know, not steep slopes and stuff like that. So I think we could button that up if that's the desire
I
of council.
think another decision by council is whether or not they want to dedicate it as park land. Just because you accept the property doesn't mean it has to be dedicated as park land. Doesn't mean that the burden has to come out of the park's budget. You know, I know that, you know, other communities would dedicate it as just municipal property. Wouldn't be parks, wouldn't be parks responsibility. It might be public works responsibility to, or, you know, stormwater division or, you know, whoever to take care of it. But, you know, I think it becomes a question of not just whether or not they take it, but how the city wants to dedicate it, how they want to utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, we already have Sandy River Park. We have 120 to 160 acre park of, you know, basically
Mountainside.
you know, steep, wet, great, you know, natural, you know, all those great things. But I, you know, we can't. That's not parkland. And when it, you know, that's my concern is that we get all this stuff that can't be used, and it's like, God, we got tons of parkland, but you know, we can't put improvements on them. So,
Right.
Lori, I have a question, Lori, about is the council worried about like kind of tightening the ship up a little pertaining to developments and stuff because of what's going on right now?
Well, I can't speak obviously on anything with Bailey Metals. So
I mean, just the general atmosphere. I didn't mean specifically that. That's why I didn't name it.
No, it's okay. We have talked, and it is one of the goals to take a look at a lot of our city code and you know, make some assessments and hopefully reword. So yes, to answer your question in short, yeah. Obviously there's a lot of other things going on, you know, yeah. So trying to get to that stuff is probably not happening as fast as some people would like.
Right.
But
well,
would it be better just to get rid of the PUDs completely? It could be done in one meeting and then circle back to it once all the language has been put down?
Well, I can't really speak to that. Obviously, I'm just one person. And not having all that language and all that stuff right in front of me, I wouldn't be able to adequately answer that question. Sorry, I'm not trying to dodge it. It's a fair question, but without having everything in front of me, I wouldn't even be able to answer that.
I think there is some sort of similar issues with planned development code language. When I was working with some of the other neighbors on Bailey Meadows, not it applies here, but I did see some LUBA appeals and some other kind of cautionary tales or something of planned development issues.
You know, if we could just do a moratorium for a short time until we can get it reviewed.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
Moratorium, yeah. Because like I said, there is, you know, evidently there's some, you know, especially when we don't seem to have, you know, and of course a lot of this is just because we have either we had, you know, we got lucky and gosh, you know, Hamilton Ridge and all those were like 90s, early 90s, I think. And I think we had, you know, I know the developers that if those were planned developments, which I didn't realize they were, but you know, that was Don Oakley and stuff, you know, those were some pretty good developers to work with. But, you know, that said, you know, maybe we just don't have a lot of, or, you know, and it's possible our code has changed since then too. Like, Kelly, I know that you guys have done a bunch of code changes since early 90s that, you know, you guys simplified it and deleted stuff. And so it just sounds like it'd be nice to know what the LUBA appeals and the weak points are, and, you know, what are the points of attack that maybe be getting used, and just kind of take the time to kind of look at our code and make sure that we've got it loophole proof, or, you know, as tight as we could make it. Because I think, you know, I think there's probably is a desire from the city council to, like you said, have more flexibility and whatever. You know, it sounds like everybody else has planned developments, and so I doubt that Sandy's going to want to stand out and say, no, we don't want that. But if we have it, I think we want to make sure that we're getting what we want out of this. Especially, you know, the thing that is going to upset everybody is that, you know, everything next to me is zoned single family residential. What the heck are you talking about, you know, medium density, you know, multi-unit apartment buildings and stuff going in? That's crazy. That can't happen. You know, so when they're talking about changing the zoning of of all, all these parcels adjacent to these single family neighborhoods, that's going to really, upset a lot of people. And of course, everybody's already upset about all the growth anyways. And so, this has the potential to really increase the densities, especially at a time when I think we were already going, the single family residential, we have limited abilities of people to have these bigger lots. Bailey Meadows is going to be a nice thing. It's going to have 7,500 plus foot lots that people are looking for, bigger than what they got at Sandy Bluff and that kind of thing. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've already experienced that. Hamilton Ridge Drive, which is zoned R3. That's a development there on Sandy Heights. If any of you aren't familiar with it, it's to the west of Bluff Road. So that subdivision, I think, has 8 townhouses and 60 something single family homes. The zoning for that is actually R3. So it's high density. The only reason all those single family homes there is because that was approved as a PD. So when that new apartment complex on Sandy Heights went in, in the last year or so, Sandy Place Apartments, I had a lot of people that were fuming and a lot of people that were angry and upset and didn't understand why the planning department was allowing an apartment next to their single family homes. Well, the simple matter of the fact is that Sandy Place Apartments was following the development code to a T. They were building in a high density zoning district. The problem is that Hamilton Ridge got a PD approval and put a whole bunch of single family homes in the R3. So they do have consequences too.
Sometimes it works backwards. Kathleen, I don't want to be while this conversation is enlightening and everything, we still have a couple of items on our agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. You're absolutely right. I apologize. Okay. So I think we covered all the planned unit development. If folks have some additional questions, then I would suggest that, maybe at the next Parks Board meeting, we maybe if people want to make some specific suggestions or something to Kelly and the city council, that we can just, try to come back around this and say, what do we want to do with the answers that we got and make any recommendations or not. Does anybody have another idea about how to approach that?
Yeah, I mean, just as a resident, I'm kind of concerned to learn of how unsolid PUD language is. I mean, from what I'm seeing going on right now, I would think that the city and the council would want to really button things up fast, and a moratorium is probably, I mean, just as a citizen, I would urge the city council to put a moratorium on them, just because they can get grandfathered in. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think legally you can put a moratorium on it. I think you would have to do what you were suggesting earlier, and that would be
just nixing the whole thing.
Yeah, and then
have you had a moratorium before, Don? Have you heard of moratorium?
No, it's just a nice word that I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, unfortunately, moratoriums don't really exist in the planning world anymore. I think there's only been 2 ever in the state of Oregon, from my understanding, at least in the last 60, 70 years. So if you wanted to entertain something like that, you would want to just delete that code chapter and then add it back in with new language later on.
Okay, we'll just call it hitting the pause button then.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to Sandy Woods.
Thank you.
This is the one that's up by Kelso Road. And Kelly, I think the question we had, do you have that plan in front of you?
No, but I know it pretty well.
Okay, so is that the power line to, since there's not a north arrow on here? Hold on, I gotta.
The power line easement goes through that property.
So
where is it on that property?
So do you see Kelso Road on there?
Yes.
It's on the opposite side. So it'd be all the way on the other end, which is the south end of the property. So Kelso Road is the north end of the property. The south end of the property is the power line easement.
Oh, okay. So it's at the on mine it's on the right. So it's kind of diagonal. It's not square, right?
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and then coming off of that, is that a street?
Coming off of what? I'm sorry.
Cul-de-sac, but
You see the little cul-de-sac? There's a little cul-de-sac there, and then there's like kind of a, we don't know what it is. It doesn't appear to be a street. It looks like maybe a wetland, stream drainage, maybe.
There's a
Yeah,
red
that's a,
line.
that's a seasonal drainage, and then that's all their tree retention for that entire 20, 30 acres, including
That's all their
Sandy
what
Woods Phase 1.
That's all their storm retention?
No, all their tree retention.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
so there's some red area. Is that wetland?
That's wetland, yes, correct.
Okay, so everybody understand, if they're looking at your agenda packet on the Sandy Woods, the light red, pink, whatever is wetland.
And that's
Then,
on both ends of the development, correct?
It's on the north end by Kelso Road, and then in that
little-
tree retention tract as
yeah, a
well,
little
yes.
spot on the tree. And then on the second map that we have shows a bunch of the tree retention.
Yeah, so if you're on Olson Road, just to orient all of you, which is kind of the south end of Sandy Woods Phase 1, a lot of those trees down there, even though the forests look pretty well, I actually went in there and walked around with the arborists and stuff. A lot of those trees were not in very good shape, actually. So a lot of those were removed, and a lot of the good trees on the site that were in a lot of the stuff that was in a good to excellent shape as far as the arborist was concerned was actually on this north portion. And so we were open to the idea of retaining a bunch of trees on the north portion in a big tract. Because as you've probably all heard, we traditionally allowed trees in backyards and then people just remove them. So that doesn't really work either.
What?
So you have trees,
Come look at them.
but you have a bunch of trees on the north end that are in lots, like in the north along Kelso there, in lots 77, 78, 79, 80, 81.
Yeah, I saw that on the plan. I would have to look at the plan again, but I think, or look at the proposal again, but I think they're actually proposing to retain more trees than they're required. They're actually wanting to retain a bunch just so that those backyards have a buffer between them and the power lines, I think.
On that tree zone that you talked about adjacent or near that little cul-de-sac there, that kind of long meandering strip with the little seasonal stream, who's going to own that property?
Probably the city.
Which will mean parkland?
Open space?
Open space, basically. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of maintenance of it.
Okay.
It's just going to be kind of wild maintenance space.
Well, I know
Wild maintenance space, wild green space.
And there's on the between lot number 46 and 47, and it looks like there's a little wedgie there that goes all the way up to the cul-de-sac. Is that going to be an access point for people?
Oh, that was something that was brought up at the pre-app, and they didn't know what to do with that land yet.
Okay.
So you got it, and that's what I was saying earlier. Is that plan's very preliminary. In talking to Joe Spaziani and Pat Sissel, the two people that are working on that, we pointed out a number of things in the pre-app that they were like, "Oh, good point," and so I think they're going back to the drawing board on a few things, and so I think whatever they submit eventually will have.
It might be nice
big
if there's
changes
an
to it.
access point, if it's accessible. I don't know. There's no
Yeah.
grade lines on here, so you can't, no topography that are shown on here. So I don't know if that's a big drop off that cul-de-sac or if it's.
Yeah, Joe, the developer, asked if he thought it was a good idea if they put in like a trail to Sandy Woods Phase 1 and then over to Sandy Bluff Annex 4 and 5. So it'd all be in that power line easement. And we said, sure. I don't know if you're going to get much or any SDC credit for that, but sure, go ahead. Put a trail in there. I think it'd be a good amenity.
Power lines would be nice.
Yeah.
At a minimum, we'd want, we like over by, what is it, Sunflower and Penny Lane, that American, where I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
That is, we requested trail access to the power line, and it's kind of a combination trail / utility easement to stormwater detention.
Yep.
You have to be careful. You can't even put like metal bollards in there because the power line is like, and then it's kind of wet. And so between the power lines frying your hair and you're standing in wet ground, you get quite the little jolt.
All the fences along there all have to be wood. You can't have You can't have any metal fencing types or posts either.
Yeah.
So
Right, no cavity fillings either.
that's right.
No kids playing with metal bats.
That's right.
So one of the also things, so because we had that was kind of the recommendation that we did made, is that we do have trail access and trail connectivity. So if Joe's mentioned, that would, I think that's what we said before. We'd want to kind of make sure we understand the layout of it and stuff. And yeah, the other thing that though came up last time was like in lots 55 and 54, where you have lots that, people are going to put up fences in their backyard based on their lot line. And what we're seeing with planning is these developments is that, you have these open space or, fish overlay or all that stuff that is not supposed to get developed. It's supposed to be protected, but the lots that are proposed overlap into these fish overlays, wetlands, blah, blah, blah. And so when somebody's got a fence up, we all know, that it's just kind of out of the city's ability to manage that as to what they do with their own yard, despite the fact that it might be fish overlay or wet or whatever. So like looking at 54 and 55, you got the wetland nearby. It doesn't include the wetland, although it did on that other subdivision that the planned development one, by Jacoby, that had wetland, that had some fish and wet stuff, I think, within the proposed lots. So
Yeah, our code doesn't require that. So right now the code allows that area, as you're talking about, to be on the lots, individual lots of record. We did suggest, like during the Sandy Woods phase 2 pre-app, that they tried to minimize that, and they agreed that for the most part they wouldn't like them to be in lots either. So I don't know. We'll see what they end up proposing in the end. But yeah, that's another thing that as planning staff we've talked about a lot, is that when you have fish areas or sensitive areas that we allow in developed lot area, it's very hard to enforce anything.
yeah, I mean, is there interest in limiting that possibility?
There's
So that
definitely interest for me. I don't know if there would be from council, but there's definitely interest for me. We have a lot of cases that have shown that it doesn't work, and
Right.
people put lawn and
lawn
storage
and
sheds and everything else in the
Herbicides.
restricted development area of creeks, which is not a good thing. So.
Right. So if it's not meeting the intent of what we want to do, how do we, formulate our code to make sure that those areas are protected, I guess?
Yeah, we would have to change our FSH code chapter to do that.
And Kathleen, just to kind of answer, I know you weren't really asking a question. I think you were just more making a statement, but my suspicion would be council would be very interested in stopping that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have talked to one elected official that's currently an elected official and a past elected official that was a council member as of like 3 years ago. And they've both owned lots in Sandy where part of their lot legally they couldn't do anything with because it was supposed to be restricted development area. And then it's just very frustrating because they have to manage it as if it's a wetland area, but it is part of their lot. So it does lead to a lot of confusion and a lot of angst, I think, with property owners. I think property owners, for the most part, would probably prefer not to have that area on their lot. It's the developers that are wanting it because then they can meet the minimum lot size and sell it to people as, oh yeah, you have 7,500 square feet, even though 2,000 square feet of that you can't do anything.
So Kelly, what are you looking for from us on the Sandy 2 development here?
Whether you guys would want the fee in lieu, and then also, I think you would, and then that's my understanding was, and then also some recommendations and ideas on the trail connectivity would be really good to have.
I think having the connectivity is something that we'd already agreed about.
Yes.
I think, and I'm just opening up I don't think that there was a park identified in the 97 Parks Master Plan here. Does anybody recall differently?
I have no idea.
opening up Google. Okay, let's move on. So yeah, just the trail. So what he was mentioning was the connectivity to, which you mentioned 2 or 3. There's so many. Sandy Bluff 4?
I think it would be Sandy Bluff Annex 5, and then it would be Sandy Woods Phase 1, where you'd want to connect the trails
Okay, all right.
So they're showing a little dash driveway like coming out the cul-de-sac to the south. Would that be the access point, Kelly?
I
It's
no,
like
I
a
don't.
little
I think we'd
hammer-
prefer it to be its own tract that would go right to the street at 15 feet wide.
Okay.
I don't think we'd want it down a private drive if we could get an alternative location.
Oh, that is a private drive to
Yeah, I mean we do have locations in
Yeah,
Sandy that.
right.
Yeah, we do have locations in Sandy where there's private drives and then there's public trails at the end of them. But
Yeah.
I would say where we can
agree with
avoid that, I would avoid it because we do get a lot of people that buy the lots later on and they're angry that there's
Right.
people walking down their private drive.
No, I totally agree with you. I didn't realize that was a
Yeah.
private drive. for
Yeah, I would
lots
avoid
40,
it if we could.
4 through 46. So what would you suggest then?
I would suggest a pedestrian tract in
Right.
between some of the lots along the power line easement there,
Okay.
a 15-foot wide tract.
So like between lot 50 and 51 or between lot 51 and 52, something there.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. What's the depth of those lots?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Too deep, it almost becomes discouraging for people at that narrow of a track for a real deep, people just don't feel comfortable necessarily with it.
Yeah, that's the code requirement is a 15-foot wide pedestrian tract with an 8-foot wide asphalt, I think is what it is. And then that allows for like 3.5 feet of planting on both sides,
Right.
which is pretty narrow.
Yeah. Well, if they're not too wide, or too long, it's not bad. But when they get, to a certain point, it's like running down a cattle chute.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to change that code section to be at least 18 feet wide instead of 15 because that would give you an opportunity to put trees actually down both sides of the trail if you wanted to.
Yeah.
3.5 feet wide is not really wide enough to do that without the trees lifting the asphalt later on.
Right. So they would be giving up a piece of those lots then.
Yeah. And we did tell them that already, that we'd prefer it in a pedestrian tract, not
Right.
down a private drive.
Right, and not an easement, but it's a tax lot that the city will own, right?
Yeah, it'd be a dedicated tract of land, yeah.
Okay. I would be fine with that.
Okay, there was no park identified in the 97 master plan. There were some trail connectivity points that when we did our, parks master planning process for future parks and future trails, the trail stuff was along the power line with connections to the neighborhoods. So
that'd
So
be
what- One thing you'll want to think about is if he does put those trail improvements in, my guess is he'll probably ask for some sort of SDC credit. I mean, I didn't tell him he'd get one, but I bet you that question will come up. So just think about it. I mean, I don't need an answer tonight by any means, but just think about if you were open to that idea, what you'd want to base that on. Obviously, we wouldn't want to give him very much, but if it was like a couple houses worth of SDCs, maybe it'd be worth it. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm sure it'll come up as a question.
and I kind of heard, I was looking at the Google Map stuff. Are these paved trails or gravel?
I think they're typically paved. I mean, my guess is if they were paved, you guys would be more open to a credit.
Right, that,
The
Yeah.
Marshall Ridge one, I think it's concrete, which is quite nice. And it's wide enough too that it has, and it's short. So it's not a particularly long trail. It's easily seen. It's comfortable to walk through.
So what
Yep.
would be helpful, I think, at this point, Kelly, is, I think you've got our kind of conceptual intent. It'd be helpful, because this is still pre-app, but to have kind of what is his proposed trail alignment and connections.
Yeah.
For, you know, and so that we can just kind of, say, yeah, that looks good. And then we could probably give you more input on SDC credit.
Yeah, I mean, send me over kind of your main points, and then I'll put those together and send them over to Joe and Pat.
Right, and would that really be an SDC credit, or would that be a deduction from the fee in lieu?
I think it would be an SDC credit, I believe.
Dedicating a separate lot as a dedicated property for public access.
Oh, that part. No, I wouldn't give them any parks fee in lieu amount, because I think they're going to be asking for a block length variance, and we would give that to them if they provided a pedestrian tract through there for a trail. So I don't think you're under any sort of obligation to give credit for the fee in lieu.
Okay.
I guess what I was thinking more of, if they then, so the improvement that will be on his property, I think he will have to make as part of the plat.
If he did the one under the power lines itself.
I think there's more debate to whether he'd have to do that or not.
Okay.
Well, and that's
And I might be wrong.
Isn't that owned by, I mean, does he have an easement under the power lines? I mean, that's owned by BPA, isn't it?
No, it's actually owned by the developer.
So I think,
BPA has an easement over the property.
Okay.
I think what we could respond with is we'd be willing to talk about it.
Right. Okay.
Right. And I'm fine with the fee in lieu also, as opposed to, anything else.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about actual parkland rather than just a trail easement,
Yeah,
that'd be different, but I don't see us giving,
I don't either.
yeah.
No,
Anybody else
no,
have ideas?
don't do that. We've had at least 10 subdivisions just in the last 3 or 4 years that have pedestrian tracks, and they've never gotten parks fee in lieu credit for them.
Okay.
Set quite the precedence.
Yeah.
Mike or Susan or Sam or Makoto, any thoughts on Sandy Woods?
Fee in lieu is fine.
Okay.
Fine.
All right, any comments on the last one that the city, I think the questions we had for this, what is it called?
Townhomes?
Yeah. What is the deal with the, what, right now, that is like the parking lot for, we have the parking there for the Fantasy Forest, right?
No,
Behind
this
Joe's
is-
Donuts?
This is actually other land that's to the west of that.
But their access is coming into that parcel where they're parking, right?
So the two options is to get access through the city lot, which I think you'll remember another developer requested that. It was before I worked here.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
also requested a sewer connection into Meinig, and at the time council denied them of both. So the two options for this developer are to request that before council again and see if they get denied or not, or to get direct access out to Highway 211.
Okay, I'm looking at this access design group, and the questions we had, like, where's Fantasy Forest from here? Is it just right on the north side of this property, or where?
It's just on the south side of the property. It would be,
Behind
south?
units number 8, 9, 10?
I don't have it in front of me. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Oh,
Where's
Okay.
the north? God, these guys got to put a north arrow in their damn maps.
well, is Joe's Donut,
Which development are we speaking of right now?
Well, it's kind of behind Joe's Donuts. It's called the Pad Townhome Apartments.
Yeah,
Did
Seth,
somebody
3 city managers ago, Seth Atkinson tried to buy this property because we wanted to kind of assure, oh, I can't access my W driver now. We wanted to assure that it would just be like a future area for Mining Park to expand into. And I think he offered them, I don't know what he offered them, 120 grand or something, and they said no. And then I do know that Jordan, since he's been here, asked them what they would be willing to sell it to the city for, and I don't know what the response was, but I know the city's been interested in the property in the past. I think their asking price has just been too high, but it's gonna have a huge impact on Mining Park and Fantasy Forest, unfortunately.
So help us get oriented, because I still don't know where we are compared to Fantasy Forest. I'm looking at picture number A100, and I see Mining Avenue,
Yeah,
and I see a roadway to the left to the left of those, yellow townhomes. And so where is Joe's Donuts, for example?
I'm trying to see if I can pull it up here. Hold on.
Okay.
Those the yellow ones. There's units 1 through 4.
Yeah. Is Joe Donuts to the left of that?
You can kind of smell the hot grease if you use your imagination.
They're going to see all the rats. Can't believe how many rats hang out behind Joe's Donuts. Mike's office used to look down on that. I shouldn't say that, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to know about that.
Yeah. Well, I think they have to, they're living in the park or something. They just.
Yeah, so I think Fantasy Forest will be 10 or 15 feet away from some of these townhouses.
Okay, so is Fantasy Forest to the north where it says building A, building B, building C up at the top of the page?
I don't have the plan in front of me, and the internet's not letting me access our W drive at
I
work.
think it'd be to the south of that, wouldn't it?
Yes, Fantasy Forest is to the south of their development. If it doesn't,
Right. I think it's.
do you see on the plan? It gets narrower, like their property gets narrower. That's the north part of the property, and the portion of the property that's wider is the south portion of the
I
property.
think Fantasy Forest is going to be down like Unit 11, Unit 12 kind of thing.
If any of you have it, you can send it to me by email real fast, and I can take a look.
I'll send it to you.
What a terrible place. How are they? I mean, talking about traffic and stuff right there.
I mean, they have. That's the problem. They have property development rights, so they can put units in there. They have to be given access legally.
You can't get
ODOT doesn't want to give them
211,
access.
can they?
I've talked to them. If the city doesn't grant them access through our property, then legally the ODOT has to give them access. They can't deny them access rights.
Oh.
It would be funky, and it would not be a good setup because you got Tupper Road there, mining a couple other driveways.
I think that violates just about every rule ODOT has, so I cannot imagine that they're going to say yes to that, but.
They have to let them have access.
You can't have landlocked property.
Yeah, you cannot. That's illegal. Yeah.
Okay.
So they have
Kelly,
to allow access.
I just sent you the file.
ODOT wants them to go through our property, but at the pre-app, we told them, well, that's not our decision. That'd be a city council decision.
Right.
Since they make property right decisions.
And can they assign a fee for that right of way?
Could we charge them? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Certainly.
$5 per car.
Yeah.
Charge the hell out of them.
So the north portion, so on your right-hand side, units 7 through 12 are right by Fantasy Forest.
Yeah.
So those trees that show up right to the right of that, that's Fantasy Forest.
Right.
Are
maybe,
they kind
maybe
of behind, like when you sit on the benches watching your kids, those are going to be right behind you?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be like right there.
Yeah, right there, right in front of you. And that's
Okay.
why Seth tried to buy the property.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah.
Is there vehicle access like to the north there where it says the words building B and, between building B and building A? Is that road access or it says a retaining wall? So there's
Where are you
no
talking-
access. This
What are you
shows
talking
just,
about?
well, I'm showing like where, this appears to show the only road access is out to Meinig Avenue.
Yeah,
Right?
to 211, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that other thing you're looking at is, I think what is that?
Fence on top of
That's
an 8-inch retaining wall.
It says tall wood fence on top of concrete, 8-foot concrete
8 inch.
retaining wall. 8-inch,
So-
okay,
Do you see where it says building A?
yeah.
That is where the parking lot is. That's not in the best condition. That's kind of for mining overflow or city hall
Right.
overflow.
Well, I mean, it's all the city meetings overflow. I mean, that's where everybody parks when when we pack the room. And plus it's I mean, the Fantasy Forest people, if they don't park down below, they park there.
Yep.
And especially those that want to use the bathroom, they just kind of, park there to go in and use the bathroom before they leave or whatever. So that's kind of the concern that we have about all this is like parking capacity being impacted by this. Just I don't know, some other issues with the proximity to I mean, what kind of a setback is required there for Fantasy Forest?
5 feet, I think.
Yeah.
That's the side yard. So the rear yard, which is opposite of the driveway out to Meinig, is the backyard. That has to be 15 feet. They're showing it as 16 feet.
But I mean, the thing, like between where it says 183.69, see that? That's the distance on
Yep.
that lot line.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it says something like 5 by 5 or something like that. Are those setback or are those porches or what are those?
I think those are porches or decks. Yeah.
Merciful.
5 by 8.
Okay.
So the
and
setback requirement is only 5 feet.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, these things are going to be right on top of Fantasy Forest.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a little creepy.
I mean, yeah, the city. I mean, I've advocated to the last 4 city managers that we should buy this land, but
Yeah. So
with the stock market going down, maybe now is the time to reach out back to them and say, hey, you want to sell this?
if they cannot get the Meinig thing, which I can't imagine ODOT saying yes to that, then I mean, does ODOT have to give them access?
Yes.
Even if it violates their inner distance things for, intersections and stuff?
Yeah, their spacing distance. Yeah, they still have to get them access.
Okay.
So what ODOT told them at the pre-app is they want them to either access through the city property, which Mike and I both told them, well, they could request that before city council, but because they were trying to get staff to commit, and we said we have no ability to grant this.
Right.
And then they said, well, if the city doesn't allow it, this was ODOT, then the city should shut down their driveway. And again, Mike and I both told ODOT that, again, that would be a city council decision. Just because this developer wants to build doesn't mean the city has to shut down their driveway that's existing.
Well, and it becomes then their de facto parking lot. And so that was one of the, the whole overflow parking, right now you need that parking for city business, city council meetings, all that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And so if it's not available for that, that's a big problem. That's just the short term. In the long term, who knows where City Hall is going to be in the future. If you wanted to sell that property, then all of a sudden you've encumbered the city's property with these easements to this other landowner that you can't undo. So that's a permanent long-term decision there that
it is, yeah. No, it's a big decision, and that's why myself and the other 2 people in the pre-app all said, staff doesn't know staff has no idea what city council is going to say to any of this. We did tell them, if you want to propose this to council, you're going to have to do a traffic analysis and you're going to have to do a lot of analysis, because we don't want you bringing this request before council and then kind of being pressured to make a big decision on our property without knowing all the facts. So,
I just can't see giving up our park parking lot, because
I can't either.
Meinig is a regional, it's kind of a regional / community park that does require, we don't have any on-street parking for that, other than a little bit in those cul-de-sacs of the neighborhoods and a little bit at Fantasy Forest, but, we're just really limited. And so, plus, and that's just the park. I would, make the same argument for City Hall business, your court days and all that. I'm sure that parking lot probably fills up. And so,
I mean, the other impact this property development will have, as you probably are all aware, is some of that parking lot and that retaining wall are going to be sitting above the area where everybody sits for the stage area too.
It's going to loom over everything.
And you're going to lose trees in Meinig Park, I guarantee it, because they're going to be doing a lot of compacting and excavating and grading. And whether the trees die right away or not, but within 10 years, you'll see some damage. Some of those trees won't survive the development.
So Kelly, what are you looking for us on this one for tonight?
I don't know. I'm not.
Bad idea or big mistake?
I'll just be honest with you. I'm not terribly excited about this development.
We can recommend against the development in general and say, we think this is a poor idea and a poor execution of a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to take a run at purchasing land, I don't know.
Well,
yes. I mean, that park right there, I mean, because City Hall is right there, and It's the heart of Sandy.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of grasping at straws here, and I'd be a little concerned about offering to buy it right now because, I think it's going to become apparent that they can't really make this work. I don't know. ODOT, I guess, let's see what ODOT has to say and get a little further down until we totally, but yeah, I would say that that we're not interested in providing access to the north because of that's parking for the park.
Yeah.
And we're concerned about the proximity to Fantasy Forest to the right. And
So what I would suggest, if you're looking for my input on this, is write something to me as the
Okay.
planning director, and then also to Lori. And that, because if it does go before city council, I'll be the one shepherding it there.
yeah,
But Lori will be one of the 7 people making the decision. So
sure.
I think
yeah.
if you want to give your input and suggestions, that Nicole.
All right. Well, it's 10 after 9. Do we want to make a motion on this, or do we want to come back and finalize, kind of hear what ODOT has to say on the road access and finalize it in May? What's your choice?
To me, I think our choice right now is that we're opposed to it as design. That our
Yeah.
concern is the preservation of the park, the preservation of the playground, and the preservation of our parking lot.
Right.
And that's our position. Is
Mhm.
no, we don't want that.
Yeah. Can you capture that, Sarah? Sarah, you muted yourself.
I didn't want you to have to listen to
Sarah?
Ava bark, so yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be able to do that. This is recorded, so I can go back and formalize the minutes. Are you going to
Great.
make a motion?
Okay, good. Can I get a motion for, Don just
Yeah,
said?
I would
Don, can
move that we
kind of put in-
prepare a correspondence that identifies our position as in opposition to this development based on impacts to Mining Park, the playground, and the parking lot,
And the intersection.
and the intersection.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Michael seconded it. All those in favor, vote aye.
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 Maybe raise your hand to vote aye. Give us all right, it's
Raise
unanimous.
all your fingers on that hand, too.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. So Sarah will kind of draft that up. Great. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a comment on,
Sure.
not on anything we've discussed, but I'd like to praise the council of the city for being nuanced enough to close the parks for COVID reasons and keep the trail open. They could have just simply closed everything, and I'm glad they didn't. I use the trail, and whenever I use it, there's families and people with dogs and all kinds of folks there. They're pretty much obeying the distance, the social distancing. The only people who are close together are family groups. And from my point of view, use of the trail is going very well, even while the parks are closed. And so I just think they made a good decision there.
I agree.
Excellent. Yep.
Well said. Lori, do you have anything to share with us from council?
No, I don't think so. I think in and just kind of discussing a little bit about your guys' conversation tonight. I think you have a council that's very pro-environment, so when you talk about land that, affects fish and streams and things like that, you're probably going to find again, I can't speak for everyone, but you have a council that very much leans that direction. I think get this, the mining park development up in front of the council sooner than later, because I would speculate they're not going to be fond of that either. So those would be my two takeaways.
Great, thank
Great,
you.
guys.
Well, if you have
Anything
nothing
else?
else, if you have nothing else for me, I'm gonna bow out and
Thank you.
have myself a
Thank you
Kelly.
beer.
for
And
coming tonight.
Kelly, thanks so much.
Kelly,
Kelly,
thank you.
later.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I got
Kathleen, happy birthday to Kathleen.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a lot of hard
Okay.
work.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
Yep, I got a birthday beer that's getting
Happy
cold in the
birthday,
fridge, so I'm
Kathleen.
gonna
Yeah,
go
happy
get that.
Happy birthday,
Thanks, I
Kathleen.
appreciate it.
Are we
Thank
staying?
you. All right, you guys.
Good to see
Yeah.
everybody. Everybody
Yeah.
stay healthy, okay?
Right.
Yep,
So
stay
long.
safe.
Thanks,
All
Mike.
right,
Bye, sir.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Take
Bye.
care.
I take it we're adjourned.
Yes,
Yes.
we are adjourned.
guys have a
When we
nice
start talking about beer, we're adjourned.